Oh, and I see Joseph. And let me just, okay, yeah. So unfortunately, Brandon was not able to make it to this meeting, but I'm gonna post the agenda, and if any of you would like to lead this, um, or I'm happy to help facilitate this. Um, just trying to pull this up. All right, so in the chat, you should see the agenda, debrief, chronic absenteeism panel, debrief, Yasmin and Nadine Foti's public witness testimony, restorative justice February panel and planning, annual report, pictures, review and content, and then student safety and mental health brief, followed by any other committee topics or items. Would any of you like to facilitate this?
You should go for it, Robert, since you've been trying to get that restorative justice panel added to the agenda for some time.
Okay. I mean, I'm not really prepared, but I can follow the agenda. So we'll start with the chronic absenteeism panel.
And I could share, I shared with you all just a few highlights from that as well. I can share my screen, but if any of you would like to start, I'm just going to share my screen really quickly.
I just had a conversation with my son. I think I told you that my son has just started working as an educational aide at John Lewis. He's in the kindergarten classroom. And he has several students who are chronically absent, and their siblings are in the school and there every day. I mean, we've got a real problem with absences from little kids to big kids. Probably, I would assume that the elementary schools have more of an attendance problem than the high schools do in some ways. And I don't think it's being addressed at all.
I think that comes back to the data question. Like that's something that should be able to fairly easily find out, which grades are having the most difficulty. But that's an interesting dynamic. So you're saying that the older siblings are at school, but younger siblings are not?
I mean, these are elementary school kids. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. But the kid he must be staying home with his parent or whatever. But it's hard. I didn't really ever have attendance problems with my students, but I taught in high school. And when I was at Garnet Patterson, we were a community school, and there was no, if you didn't come to school, there was going to be somebody knocking on your door during the class or whatever. But now that we have especially with the middle and high schools, where kids go from all over the city to go to school, there really aren't attendance officers that are knocking on your door. We used to have an attendance officer, Mr. Jefferson. I remember my wife talking. She went to what was then Orr Elementary in Ward 7. Oh, I guess it's in Ward 8. And was that, Carlene, is that in Ward 7 or 8? Oh, she's still eating, I guess. But and she remembered the attendance person who used to go after, because her brother, she'd go to school all the time, but her brother, even in elementary school, was like an attendance problem. He just wouldn't go 2 blocks to the school. But it's just, it seems to me that it's being ignored. When I bring it up, I don't know, Robert, when you go into ANC meetings and stuff like that, do people understand that we've got this emergency in attendance?
Yeah, I think people are starting to pay more attention because people are rightly or wrongly connecting it with crime spike. So I think it's starting to, but I hear what you're saying. That, but I also feel like there are lots of programs, there are lots of initiatives that just aren't really gaining traction, or they're just present in a few schools and not like across the board. I think it's a really two-pronged issue. Like part of it is schools themselves, like making sure that they're engaging, that students understand their like why they need to be there, and that it's a rewarding experience to them. And then on the other hand, there's all these outside of school issues that can prevent students from being at school, ranging from uh, feeling that they can get to school safely, to having to take care of family members. Like I talked to a lot of students who, uh, at the high school level, talking about kids would miss school because they were taking care of younger siblings. So that was a different kind of twist that you were talking about, where the younger siblings are not there.
Yeah, I don't know. Is Carlene or what is now Boone Elementary? Is that in Ward 8 or Ward 7?
It's Ward 8. Yep, it's
It's
now
in Ward 8. Okay, okay. But it just because to me it's an emergency that needs to be addressed, and it seems like this same thing about the system about DCPS, especially saying that we don't have a teacher retention problem or we don't have a truancy or attendance problem. And then they put out OSSI puts out this report card with these unbelievable numbers, percentages of chronic, chronic absences, which is 18 days. I mean, Alex is telling me he's got a kid he's already missed 40 days in kindergarten. And his siblings they're dropped off in the morning somebody drops them off. And but the system doesn't recognize that it's an emergency. Do people talk in your ANCs, Carlene, about that?
I don't think people are directly talking about attendance. I haven't heard. I mean, I know it's an issue. I know council has done 2-day hearings on it. I think that we should probably complement whatever their outcome is. I know there was previously an attendance task force that we had a representative assigned to. So curious of like, my guess is there's nothing new that we haven't discussed. It's more action by everyone involved. So.
Yeah, I mean, you say task force, all I think about is somebody's getting an extra check.
And that's my worry of that I mean, I don't know. Was it effective? Did they come out with a report? Do they have recommendations? We often send stuff to committee with recommendations, and then were they acted on? Were the solutions given time to be implemented? And just curious to know what council is doing, because again, they had 2-day hearings on this topic.
Is
So we're
is
not
it the
the issue.
is it Everyday Counts task force that you're referring to?
I think so. Wasn't that dissolved?
Yeah, I was on that, but they didn't.
Nothing came of it.
I went to a couple of meetings and the people there, they didn't know what the hell they were talking. I mean, to me, it's just like teacher retention, or when at the beginning of school, when the schools, if they don't have a teacher in a classroom, that's easy to find out, but we can't find out any information. I mean, when you were talking, Robert, about um, the data, schools have to turn attendance in every day. If a kid is absent 2 or 3 days in a row, somebody needs to know about that right. But it can't happen if we've got this. I mean, if somebody came out with the attendance figures for Ward 4's elementary schools, they could do that. I could find that out tomorrow. I mean, it's in somebody's computer, but the numbers are just astounding.
Mhm.
But I'll shut up.
So is this committee being tasked to do something? I believe I heard President Thompson mention something about codifying our panel, information from our panel. So I'm not sure if this group is supposed to be like generating recommendations or something, or Darren, do you have an idea of what's supposed to come up next?
From what I gather, yeah, like building out a resolution based on this and other information from the panel. I know there was talks about possible roundtable to just further get information. I know during the testimony, it was highlighted to reach out to families and students and be able to get just a really good idea of what's going on the ground, as well as maybe even working with the other agencies on that. So ultimately, I think it would be up to this committee on how to move forward with that, on doing roundtables or some other outreach effort, or just jumping right into a resolution based on all the information.
I mean, I think
available.
given that council had 2 days hearing, the roundtable was recommendation for me that we didn't have to do the 3-minute speed talk lightning round, and we can actually get some deep suggestions. So I don't think we need to, well, in my opinion, we don't need like roundtable. And again, it was just more of a, instead of having the panel where we had to do lightning round to get down into the issue a little deeper. It sounds like the more immediate step is to do like have preliminary points for a resolution.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and we have the somebody produced a summary of the council hearing testimony, correct, Darren?
Yes, I believe I shared that out not too long ago, but I could re-forward that after this meeting.
Yeah, I agree with Carlene that like conversation has been had to a large degree, and we need to push on the actions. Although I think it was Owen who said that there would be some value in talking to families, and I think that's true, but I don't think that should prohibit us from moving forward on some action points.
And you all mentioned going to your schools and talking to them. Carlene, you mentioned hearing from one school that students are in the school, but not being counted as
I'm wondering like what the layers are of the attendance issue. You have the students who literally, so I remember when the first enrollment after the first comeback from after the pandemic, right? There were kids literally missing from the numbers. So I remember like actually have to roll out the first last year budget season. That's what happened. Last year budget season, there was this big talk about like, well, everybody's enrollment is down. And I was like, well, where are the kids? Where are the students? Have they moved out of the city? Are they in a different state because it's cheaper? Like have we laid eyes on the children? So that's one element of it. It's like, have people just moved on from the city? Then the other element is truly students who just aren't coming to school, like the chronically absent. Then you have students who are coming to buildings because it's a safe space, but aren't getting to class. So they might be, and I'm not sure how they do attendance. And I remember I was in high school, we had an attendance period, which is our second period. So you could be a little late, but they will count you your second period. Well, if I skipped that period, I was marked absent, but I was in the building. I'm not sure. It sounds like, and I was at Blue when I heard that part, but I'm not sure like how some of the students are, like they swipe into a class. I'm not sure how attendance is calculated. So I'm curious, like, what are the layers of attendance of like, who have we not touched base with? and where are they? Who is in DC, but is not making it to the building chronically? Who is coming to the building and doesn't feel engaged with their education programming? All different layers that I think require different solutions. Yeah.
And a
That's
lot of that, oh, I'm sorry.
that's really, that's a good overview. Because if a student, like when Robert was talking about, if I've got several siblings and I have to take them to different school, all right, and I get to school, I think it's after 10:45. If I get to school after 10:45, I'm absent. And I can
Which
be in three more classes during the day, but I'm counted as absent. I think it would help me if we had somebody come at one of our business meetings just from DCPS and explain just what Carlene was talking about right now, because there are so like the layers of whatever. Because when I go to the schools, I don't see any like if I go to Roosevelt or go to because I go to Cardozo for other things, I don't see the halls filled with students cutting class. All right, but I know that there may be students that are in classes, but they're not counting as being because of a certain time, like you were saying, having homeroom at the second period or whatever. So that covers for somebody getting to school by 10 o'clock and they're still counted as here. But I don't even know, I don't know what the policy and the policy, the problem is in DCPS is there's no one policy for the schools. All the high schools are not on the same bell schedule. There are block schedules, there's AB schedule, there's a 4x4. There are all kinds of different schedules anyway. So like there may be there's a student someplace in DCPS going to 7 classes a day. And there's another student going to 4 classes a day. But I think we need to find out, and DCPS, but they have trouble even coming and testifying or talking to us about that.
To your point, Fraser, like this is ultimately gets reported to Aussie at some point, right? Like it gets shared to Aussie.
Yeah, I think so. I would think that the attendance must go someplace. I mean, Aussie, the charter schools uh, have to submit attendance. I would think every day. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, how that works.
I'd really like to know.
I'm also curious of like I know the student advocates office does a great job of doing like reports about like the student experience. Like they did the whole safety report, that kind of thing. I'm curious from like student perspective if they ever like attendance report of like, I don't know, what that breaking it down like that. But I'm also kind of like, a report action, or maybe we can do both.
The
Hmm.
DME too, because the DME supposedly has something to do with both charter and public schools.
I mean, it would be great if they
It
had a
would
business.
seem it would seem that somebody would be getting these numbers. I mean, if Aussie, if that report, if you look at the report, and I did look at the report card, just to look at those numbers on attendance, because all the schools have a percentage of their attendance, and the chronic attendance is just unbelievable, and it's not
Yeah.
even the usual suspects necessarily.
Problem is that's all from last year, right? So like we don't have. I think the point that Cohen was making is we need real time, publicly facing data. Um, so I don't know, Joey, how
We
does it
don't.
work at your school? Do you know, like, if is your attendance taken just once per day, or is it for each class?
We have our attendance period is like the first 15 minutes of the day.
Okay.
And and they have it so that if you're late, you have to like, I think they have like a new system now where you have to sign in at the front, and then you get like a QR code or something, or they record your attendance somehow if you're late after the first 15 minutes of the day. But I don't know if you're counted as absent if you get to school past a certain period. But yeah, I think that's how they do it.
I'm
Do
also
you ever not get to school on time, Joseph?
I
I've got a feeling you're a bad example.
yeah, I mean, I have to get to school earlier because my mom works there. Yeah, but
You're a really bad example.
no, but I know we have it so there's like a one entrance that you go in for high schoolers at the like first 15 minutes, and then after that you have to go in through a different entrance, and then that's how they mark you as whether or not you've gotten to the building on time or not. So it's not like we get a marked in class attendance, and then also like whether or not we got to school on time at like the front desk.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah,
and it sounds Blue seems to have something similar. I have a visit with what's the new Bard on the 23rd. I can ask them what's going on. Like what their attendance solution is. I'm also curious like what was the impact of the attendance reg or whatever that we voted on last summer. I think we did something to, was it the 80-20 to 60-40?
Right.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that too. I forgot about that.
Does
Because
it
they should have figures on that, right?
it would be a year now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the summer would have been 1 year of that new method. And that was supposed to highlight better of who is chronically absent versus who's a little late. But I'm also curious of like who's in school but not going to class. Because I had 40 absences on my report card. I was in the building. I was in my student government class because I didn't find value in my Italian class, which I wish I would have hung out in Italian a little more now. But I was in my student government class and elected officials. So I'm just curious of like, what experiences are students value in class or in school? What is making students come to school and they just, decide they want to hang out like these are all issues that like aren't new and across districts. Like I remember when I was in school, like we had, which is, I mean, I know there's different, philosophies now, but like we had a hall suite where everyone got pushed into the cafeteria. Yeah, you got pushed into the cafeteria, and it's funny because one of our, I guess you consider a dean now. He now works in Anacostia High School. He was the person, but he was like tough love. So Mr. Edmonds like issued the discipline for them getting caught up in hall suite, but then he was also like pointing out the key, like, well, why are you late? Why are you distant? Right. And like he was building relationships with students who needed that extra attention for whatever reason to boil down to some of the deeper issues of like, what's going on here. And I know when I went to Blue, it was interesting that students were asking for like old school and not, like values and things like that. So it's like we stepped away from some things that I don't know if they were working or not when I was at Suitland High School, but I do know we didn't have like, you had to work to not be in a classroom. And if you weren't in a classroom, you were in a room. And if you were in that room enough, there was consequences, and if not just a consequence, there was somebody who was trying to build a relationship with you to figure out what else is going on that you keep ending up in certain circumstances. And I'm curious about like, has our city started to go like reevaluate just some of the things that in my head may have worked. I don't know, look like at least worked. May not be the most popular ways of doing things, but I do know we had to be in a classroom. And that was 3,000 students across two campuses.
Right.
So
We had, I keep bringing up restorative justice because when we had that restorative justice program, my last couple of years at Cardozo, for seniors, they didn't have any place to hide. We had groups of teachers and mentors and stuff like that that were tracking them and calling their parents and stuff like that. And it really worked. And I had restorative circles in my classroom every single day. Every student, the first 10 minutes of class, they had to get to class on time. And after the first period, then they had no excuses. And then we would have a circle and just talk about whatever. And it really worked. But I know that I think at Woodson there, they got restorative circles going, but all the schools were supposed to be doing it, but they didn't do it.
Darren, do you know who the rep was who pitched the idea of focusing on attendance? I'm just kind of curious of like,
For the panel itself.
or yeah, or like, because usually the ideas emerge from representatives about like who, and they have like an idea of a solution. Because it seems like none of us here were the ones. I mean, I think we value the topic dearly and we understand the value in it, but we weren't the representative who pitched it. So it's kind of hard to identify exactly what to do with it at the committee level, even though it should emerge from the committee. It's kind of hard to identify without having that representative's like vision of what they want us to do.
That's a great question. I am not recalling like who spearheaded this, or if they do a resolution, who would sponsor that. But I could do some more digging after this and just kind of reach out and find out. I think because I remember it being on the panel planning document that was coming up, but I think it was so far ahead of that that I'm not quite sure who put it on there or how it was raised.
So how about like pending what you find out from that and maybe getting some clarity on what the goal was, we can potentially do a resolution drawing from the panel and the council hearing. But maybe stick a pin in that until we get some clarity on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll follow up offline.
All right, and then we can move to debriefing on Yasmin and Nadine Fode's testimony during public comment.
That was the one that I pitched to be added to the agenda. So hopefully it provides a little more guidance. So yeah, I think our research team, I reached out because I was curious. I mean, their testimony was striking for a couple of reasons. One, like to have the two sisters who literally are 15 years apart and had similar issues, despite administration, but, felt like they weren't seen in their school. It caught my ear and it caught my attention. I asked our research team, who quickly gave me I asked them what was like DCPS's policy for student demonstrations. And just kind of at a quick glance and, not knowing all the ins and outs of exactly, we only know what those who testified said. It seemed like, if anything, they were supposed to receive a written response from the school administration. Is the only thing that I could see that was for what we were given. Some of the headers were kind of, I think the team did great, but I couldn't tell what part of the policy was extracted. But it seemed like, based on what the policy said and what Ms. Fote was saying, she should have at least received a response about why the school took XYZ action. And then in the whole testimony, it had me going back to the day 2019 when Washington Met students were going down to the Wilson building and protesting. And in the middle of their protest, DCPS changed guidance on when students can come down to the buildings. And I raised that because somebody had reached out to me and was like, oh, what if we get some students to come to testify related to, I can't remember, one of the hearings, I can't remember which one it was, but I immediately thought about wait, DCPS has guidance about students missing school time to go to the Wilson building, even though testifying, especially with our new social studies standards, is definitely a related, activity. So I guess I'll say all that to say I would like to maybe maybe do like a letter of inquiry. And I know Representative Boulay is supposed to be following up too. I know him and I have different speeds in relation to follow up. But I would be curious of like maybe doing a letter of inquiry about like, hey, this is the testimony that we've received. We are curious about, you know, your policy says the student should receive a response. We're curious about like what happened here. And we're also curious about like how can we in the future, especially if we're given the social studies standards, teaching children how to do you know, these social justice issues, to do them successfully in their building. Because if you can't do it in high school or college, you know, where else do you learn or have the opportunity? So that's kind of my thoughts. I'm not sure people, I know it can get, and I'm not gonna mix words, I know it can get dicey. The principal's pretty popular. I know we don't like to push DCPS super hard, but I just didn't feel like, it made me sad to hear that 15 years later, her younger sister was having this similar issue. And, you know, maybe the video, I haven't seen the video, I haven't even looked at the title. But I do know as a former educator, sometimes what you show, you can't, you know, however, to do the Palestinian Pride or whatever event, and they did the due diligence of getting other student bodies, they didn't get a response. That does not seem congruent with the policy that I read. So curious of your thoughts.
Who are you suggesting the letter would be addressed to? The principal level or DCPS?
I
DCPS.
mean, I would say like probably principal and CC DCPS. And I mean, I guess like not making accusatory, because again, I don't know we don't only know the one side,
Yeah,
who can testify. But more of like inquisitive and more about like, this is one case. I know we had another parent come testify about his son not feeling like they belong from a different group. So I'm just kind of like, could this be some sort of exemplar, some sort of reminder, especially in light of us passing social studies standards. We are literally as a city teaching our students how to embrace social justice issues. This is a very meaningful social justice issue. And how can we all get on board to make sure that students are able to do, you know, do these kind of things in a supportive environment. So maybe maybe the principal and DCPS. I'm not sure if that will appear threatening to the principal. My goal is not to threaten, like that's not my intent. However, for a student to come at 6 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, you know, and the sister had the same issue 15 years prior, I think we can work towards something. So
Did you see the article in the paper earlier in the week about what they did?
I
Okay.
did not. Can you
If you
share?
look at I think it was Monday's post. I'm not sure. It might have been Tuesday.
yeah.
But they went to Andy Shalal, invited them to Bus Boys and Poets. And they had like standing room only at Bus Boys and Poets in Tacoma. That's the one in Ward 4, where they did a whole Palestinian music and stuff like that. And they also had quotations in the article about from the principal, and the principal's a friend of mine. But and I've talked to him about what I thought he should have done, but it didn't really help, I guess. But so it was on the news that night I mean, I think it was the most time we've had on television since I've been on the board. Uh,
Oh,
um,
for clarity, Fraser, was so you're talking about the Foti sisters there was an event at Bus Boys for them, or you just talking about okay, I haven't seen. Yeah, if somebody can share those, I would love to.
yeah, it was a really good article about what you've just been talking about. And it was slanted much towards them than it was towards DCPS, but it did have, quotations from the officials from DCPS. And
Yeah,
the news
spokesperson, I
broadcast,
think.
huh?
Yeah, it was a spokesperson, I believe, from DCPS.
Right, yeah, spokesperson, that's right.
I'm supportive of an inquiry to kind of ask what happened, and hopefully in the process that would kind of move things forward. Um, Probably worth checking in with Eric, and I think Brandon also, I know Brandon talked with them pretty extensively after the meeting, so he may maybe check in with each of them, but Carlene, would you be
especially,
willing to?
especially in this election year. And the social studies standards are gonna be up and running and before the election. But what Carlene is talking about advocacy and student voices is very important that the system needs to acknowledge the fact that students have voices.
Yeah, and there was a student testifying at the conflict resolution and school safety hearing, like a elementary school student. So it happens.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And Joseph's going to be testifying sometime during this school year, I'm sure. I'm giving you the side eye.
All right, so if can we leave that with Carlene? You'll
Yeah, I'll reach out to Eric and Representative Best and give them a few days to respond. Loop the committee in too, and then get their feedback and then figure out how to consolidate. And then in the meantime, also look at these articles. And I know the older folksy sister, the eldest sister, reached out too. So I need to circle back and look at her. But I think hers about her curriculum idea. So I will make sure I loop the committee in just so everybody knows like where we are with it. But I also kind of feel like solving their or working with their issue is just one part of it. I think it's a whole bigger thing. Like this is one example of like sometimes what happens when students are pushing against something that, you know, may not be quote unquote in vogue or popular or when there's political pushback. So
Great.
thank you.
thank you, Dr. Reed. So next is the restorative justice panel. So I proposed that, and I've been working with Rochelle on panelist recommendations. I'm not sure where that stands in terms of invitations or folks who have agreed. We're also trying to, I've been trying to identify student participants. And someone's supposed to get back to me with some ideas for that, but if anybody else has a good line on getting a student, I guess I think I said this to Rochelle too, like we could also ask Dan Davis if again if he has a good contact, since
I-
that worked pretty well, I think, with the absenteeism panel.
We
I-
did
I-
have some testimony um, in maybe October from a couple of people from Woodson about restorative justice. Do you remember that, Carlene? Do you remember, Robert?
You talking about
I
last October?
I think Woodson has one that's working,
Yeah, that sounds right.
so maybe that would be an avenue too.
Yeah, thank you.
And I raised that with Dan. I saw him today and just put it on his radar if he knows any students. So far we have, let me see, three students who are available and interested.
Okay.
Serving on the one from Basis, one from Capital City, and one from Thurgood Marshall. And we also have 4 school specialists or coordinators and 1 principal from the Sojourner Truth principal.
That was the same person we saw the other
Yeah,
day.
he was at the absenteeism.
So we have we have
You don't have anybody from DCPS?
yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Specialist coordinator, restorative practices coordinator, LaSalle Backus, elementary,
Okay.
Robert Higgins. So there are 8 who said they're available and interested. I could share these out. So I'm thinking towards the end of the month, just this committee would then select 3 or 4 to move forward as the panelists, and then I could send out or actually Rochelle is taking lead on this, so she would send out the logistics and everything like that. Like I'm reading off of her chart.
So the
So
next step for us would be to narrow down from who's available.
exactly.
This is February.
Yes, for the February public meeting.
February's right around the corner.
Yeah. But I mean, so far having 8 who are available is pretty good.
I think
Yeah.
if all of the students, I think we need to have someone in a high school. I would recommend Woodson as a one student from Woodson. Do you know anything about your schools, high schools, Carlene? Do they have restorative justice in Blue and Anacostia?
I'm not sure how it's executed, but I would imagine, I know DCPS rolled out some sort of like curriculum.
Yeah, I know they rolled it out.
I think I'll be back in Blue on the 30th. So I can ask like what does it look like in their buildings. But I do remember I had a friend who, yeah, they rolled out some sort of curriculum at maybe last year at some point, and everybody's supposed to be like following it, but I also know it looks different in different places.
Yeah, this was back, I retired 2017, so it was 2016 and 2017, those 2 school years, that it was like the hot topic for all the schools to do. But just like everything else that DCPS does, it's a hot topic and then it burns out. And, oh yeah, well, we did that, but just like when Robert was talking, or when you were talking about your um, hall sweeps, I mean, that was really effective.
I got caught in one just because I was curious about it, and I had to go to Saturday school, and
Yeah.
my mom wasn't
Yeah.
able to come, but my village took me, and I was threatened that if I ever make them go to this event again, it's going to be problems. And that was all it took. But I also realized that, there's also levels and layers. And I also know that there were dedicated staff members to doing certain things. I also know it's also probably a lot of liability on how things were also done. We were a little more unregulated. I can't
Yeah,
say
but
back.
that's consequences are important, and that's the problem with the system is it doesn't have consequences.
Yeah, it took me once, and I just said I don't ever want to do this again.
Good,
You got,
good.
you got restored.
I hung out in my student government class instead.
Yeah, right. You like Robert said, you got restorative justice.
All right, so Darren, are we good to say that our next thing would be to respond to Rochelle's suggestions?
Yeah, I think let me double check the end date or like the deadline for the people she emailed, what that is. And then once we hit that deadline, then I believe we can share out or she'll reach out to the committee with who is available and then go from there. Another thing that I could point out is even though we select 3 or 4 panelists, typically we'll send out an email like to the panelists who are interested but not sitting on the panel, inviting them to come in as public witnesses and just sharing out how to write testimony around that and just encourage them to come in and provide further testimony as public witnesses.
Good.
If you know of any middle school students or high school students that would like to add their voices to this topic, absolutely. We could reach out and share out resources on how to provide public witness testimony.
Great.
All right, next up is annual report pictures, review, and content. I know I submitted my pictures. I believe Dr. Reed submitted her pictures. But what's the ask here?
Okay, so the next steps coming up this week, and you'll probably hear more from our deputy director, Jen, will be members, will be reviewing those. I just wanted to highlight that as well, and I was talking to Brandon about it. The sections have been drafted and reviewed through staff side. Now we're gonna kick it over to the members. One of the sections is for this committee. And so I just tried to capture as many things as possible from this committee. I know it's the first, we just completed the first year of it. And so I just tried to capture things like defining the term safety, passing seizure safe schools, things like that. But also at the last section is looking ahead. And maybe that can kind of go into this last agenda item, like other committee topics items. I know just revisiting the work plan. Whatever would come up for 2024 could be in the next steps for that section. And I'd be happy to send like a separate email with just that section. But there's quite a few sections in there for members to review.
When you talk about pictures, what are you saying?
Just inviting members to share any pictures that you have of you with your constituents at events, anything that you have, encouraging members to share those. There was a link to a SharePoint, folder, and you would just send it over, or I think maybe following this meeting, I could resend that link or figure out a way, if you have any pictures, to share that for this committee or for anything for the annual report.
Okay. I don't,
I found a few good pictures. The tricky part is making sure students' faces are not in the pictures. So I have a really good picture of like Robert, you're in a few, Carlene at the Whitman Walker event, the East of the River Fall event. I had to like crop out the students, but it still turned out pretty good. But yeah, I was looking on my own. But if you have any pictures that
That's
you
engaging the public versus
Huh?
just taking. I said, look at us engaging the public versus just taking stage pictures. Who would have thought?
Yes. So excited about that. I loved going back through the pictures and just pulling what I could. So I actually added as many as I could. But if you have any that you like, any favorites, definitely send those over.
I think I have a picture of that event we had at Nationals Park. Does that count? Was that or was that?
That counts. I think we already have that, but if you have
Oh, well, that's all right.
anything,
That's all right. That's all right.
definitely send it over.
How about do we have do I know they have one in the paper, a picture of the panel of the sisters talking at the last public meeting. That might be something worth value. Or the
At
green,
the January public meeting?
yeah, or the green people, the green whatever that.
Oh, the Green New Deal that would
Yeah.
be 2024. So that would be for
Oh,
this
that's right. That's right.
year's annual report. But
Well,
good
when
point.
they had like, I'm sure they took a lot of pictures
Yeah.
in December and November when they were testifying um, about that then.
Yeah, we have a lot of those pictures. So
Okay,
I saw
okay.
one of those pictures with the Green New Deal. So yeah, absolutely. And
I
if
didn't
you
get it.
don't, and if
I
you
didn't
don't
get a.
have
I didn't get a
pictures,
chance to. I didn't know that. I don't check my text during the meeting, so I didn't get a chance to see my invitation to be in the picture after our meeting. I think everybody else was in it. So
we have a lot of pictures of you, Fraser.
good, 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 good.
Um, I know we're almost coming up on time. Robert, do you mind if I
Yeah,
share my screen for
yeah,
this?
go ahead. I need to reserve like 3 minutes at the end.
Okay. Um, so I know there was this state of the school or state of student safety and mental health report. just looking at everything that happened in 2023, like just uh kind of planning things out for 2024. And there were like a few things that were gonna go in the report. I think it would be better, and I kind of talked to Brandon about it. If I took a stab at making just a 2-page or 3-page brief on everything taking place in 2023 in terms of student safety and mental health. And so I put together a draft outline that I think might make sense. And the purpose of it would help this committee kind of take a step back and look at any statistics, data, hearings, panels, and the committee work of 2023 to help look forward to 2024. And so I would provide a first draft to you all in March. And at the end of March, finalize it after getting a review from you. But it would be just our safety definition, any statistics that came out for safety and mental health of students. A listing of hearings and just high-level notes from state board panels, committee of the whole hearings. That resolution tracker that I built out, highlights from that. So just looking back at, I worked with Rochelle, we put together just a list of all the resolutions related to safety and mental health, and then looked at, was there follow-up or follow through with them? Uh, how clear were the recommendations versus just kind of abstract. So we looked at that, and I could create visuals around that, but that would be part of the brief. Any school outreach, so I'd probably reach out to you all on just what schools you visited and some highlights from that, and then next steps and recommendations for 2024. Does that make sense to you all? Is there any, do you have any feedback on this brief?
Can't wait to read it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and I was just afraid of doing a report while the deputy mayor of education is still doing their safety enhancement committee that Dan is sitting on. And so I think just taking a snapshot of everything from 2023 might be helpful.
Where is that committee as far as finalization?
They're on they finished their 3rd meeting. I'll have to pull it up. I have so many windows open, but there's information on when that wraps up. I could follow up with you on that.
Okay, that's fine.
I think they're nearing the end.
Yeah. How do I end this? Oh, I just want to like close this out. How in the world do I do that? Oh, stop share. But that's where we're at with that. Any other questions with that brief? Would that be helpful to the committee?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, awesome. And then lastly, for the work plan items, perhaps we could work on it offline. But there were a few things on the work plan for 2024, including hiring a vendor and doing a report, something around safety. I think just look like kind of waiting to hear back from that DME committee on safety, just so we're not duplicating work, might be helpful. But just looking ahead and planning around 2024 in the work plan. I think will be
That safety report, was that safety report the only like over umbrella work? Like safety report, what else was like
one
overarching things? Also
one
wonder
may
if we can switch out safety report for attendance, if somebody hasn't done that already, but go ahead.
Yeah, one major report or study that I think you're talking about that is it was the um having a vendor look at student safety, just like a facet of that. But looking ahead, yeah, I think you could switch that out for something else. Because I think we budgeted for it for this fiscal year. But we're not committed to anything just yet. Like we haven't built out a scope of work or anything for that. So that might be in updating the work plan, updating the topic.
Gotcha. And were there other topics on the work plan? Buckets of work for us? Oh, that's it.
Let me pull that up.
No, no, that's not it. That's something else. Sorry.
Oh, I'll X out.
I can pull it up. I shared in the email to y'all a link. Hopefully that worked.
Oh, right.
But I'll pull it up right now.
Just to get my creative juices flowing
Mhm.
about
Oh,
all the
and I know
possibilities.
I know you want to have 3 minutes at the end, Robert. So
Might as well start, Robert.
but this is it. I know. Oh, the school community well-being committee website has been updated, so that's all complete. I updated all of this, but this community engagement study, this is what we could review and maybe offline update. So this was more surveys and focus groups around student safety that we have not started.
So that and a website and what, that was it?
The website's complete.
Oh,
The several things up here, this report, I'm switching out to the brief. But
okay.
SRO discussions, I think this committee mentioned just we wouldn't pursue that. And then everything I just shared with that outline, I would just move up the dates to this year, to 2024. And that's about it. And then healthy schools, facility network complete, committee planning for 2023. That should say 2023. So just updating this, and we could return to this offline.
Okay.
All right, my turn to wrap it up.
Please.
Okay, so the link I shared was to the draft resolution for educator wellness. Carlene, I do not feel like I incorporated your feedback because I just wasn't sure how. Still open to doing that, but I was hoping that we could vote this out of the committee to move it to share at the next working session and with the next student advisory committee meeting.
You need a motion?
I guess so.
I move that we adopt the draft of educator well-being for, I guess, going to a working session. It's probably a terrible motion, but that works.
Second,
Second, all right, it's been moved and seconded, all in favor of moving it to the working session. Raise your hands.
You get to
Go ahead.
vote, I think, in this. Yeah,
you can vote. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The motion has been passed to advance this to the working session. So we'll get feedback from, or we'll open it up for feedback to the broader board. And Carlene, if I can still work with you on what you had raised to get that in there too.
Cool. And I have a meeting with somebody who spoke at one of our panels a couple meetings back on this 2nd, I think. If I mean, yep, on the 2nd. Chandler Denard, he was one of the panelists.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been doing some kind of study, something on educator wellness. So if I can in time somehow get that feedback to you too. we
Okay,
might
good.
be
Yeah.
on- Mhm.
Yeah. Sounds good. Aaron, do you know if the attendees can see the chat?
They can,
Okay.
yes. I don't think
Um,
they have access to the SharePoint.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I'm noting that there are several attendees, and I'm not sure what their interest is, but I thought maybe if any of the members want to put their email in, and I'll do that. If they want to follow up, they can contact us.
Yeah. And if okay, great. And if the attendees want to reach out to us, the state board as well, I'll just put in SBOE@dc.gov and my email address as well. If you want to CC me, so I can make sure to get more eyes on that.
Right, yeah, so hopefully they'll have a minute to capture that. And I think that does it, right?
Yes, thank you all. I think this is great. So our February working session is coming up. I'll send out the committee report and next steps.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Aaron.
Y'all have a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone. You
Night.
too.
Bye-bye.